Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Focus on Liberia. My name is Dennis Guy, and we are broadcasting from Atlanta, Georgia. In tonight's edition of Focus on Liberia, we're going to be discussing the 2022 approved national budget. And by the way, we are live on Prime FM 105.5 in Monrovia. At this time, I want to welcome my man at controls at Prime FM, Mr. Prince Mulbah. Prince, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Dennis, for joining me here in Liberia. It's great once more to link with you guys from the US so that we can have a discussion that will benefit our woman Liberia. It's great joining you tonight.
Thank you, Prince. I want to welcome all our viewers from across the globe. First, I want to welcome joining us for this show is our resident economist and FOL marketplace co-host, Mr. Dehpue Zuo. Dehpue, welcome to Focus on Liberia. If you can unmute. Unmute yourself, Dehpue.
Thank you, Dennis. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be back here today. And I want to say welcome to our other colleagues who are joining us for this discussion. And Prince, I want to say thank you for the time in Liberia and the sacrifice to make our people hear the good news and also some of the analytical view from abroad. Thank you.
Thank you, Dehpue. By the way, I always like to mention Dehpue is in his propose suit, and Dehpue has his fingerprint on the PAPD. Dehpue, we are very excited to have you.
Thank you.
I also want to welcome Mr. Ahmed Sirleaf. He's a planning and governance consultant of Focus on Liberia. Ahmed is joining us from Minnesota. Ahmed, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Dennis. It's a pleasure to always be here on Focus on Liberia with other esteemed Focus on Liberia analysts and panelists and Prince in Liberia. Thank you so very much for working with FOL to relay some of the views and perspectives that we have to share here today.
Thank you. And I want to say, or you may be wondering, what is this governance guy doing on a budget show? Well, budget is a tool, and we use that in governing. And so we invited a guy who knows a thing or two about governance, about planning, and how this is connected internationally, because he does some international relations and international development. And so we thought Ahmed should be here. Again, thank you, Ahmed, for coming.
Yeah, there's a pleasure.
Last but not the least, is this guy was on Focus on Liberia for a couple of times long ago. We are glad to have him back. That's Emeric Nicole, accounting and finance guy who is joining us to discuss budget. Emeric, welcome to the show.
Dennis, thanks. The panelists, thank you all for being here, especially to Prince Mulbah. You know, I know it's late over there. The sacrifice you are making for the country to be up at this time, to have this done, and now people can be able to gain some knowledge from it. So thank you, Dennis, and thank you, Focus on Liberia.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much, Mr. Emeric Nicole. Thanks for joining us here. And let's go straight into it. The national budget. This time now we have a fiscal budget from January to December 2022. It was passed by the House. Then it went to the Senate. Now the president has approved it, and that approved budget has been released, and it's on the Ministry of Finance website. We can all access it. So we looked at it, and we want to talk about it. So let's get the ball rolling. Let me start with Emeric and say, Emeric, what is a budget? We say, we know the 2022 budget. What is a budget, especially when it comes to the government of Liberia?
Yeah, then is to simplify a budget is to look at your revenue, right? Your net revenue inflow, and then your expenses to match your revenue and the expenses. But then you have programs, what we call project, to look at the projects and see how you can put them into the budget to impact your community, your country, and everybody. So the budget is typically something that, okay, we're going to receive something from our resources of our productivity, and at the same time, attached to the productivities or expenses, operating expenses that you're going to match against the budget to see what are you doing well, what are your people are benefiting from it, to see how the country is doing with what you are receiving, as intake from tax revenue and other flows or other grants, other revenues that are coming to the country. So to simplify, I would just say it that way until we pick up to go in depth, into this conversation.
Thank you. And let me let Ahmed add to that. So Ahmed, when we talk about the government budget, this is the budget of the government. What are we talking about for the regular Mamere in Douala?
Thank you, Dennis. So first of all, let me correct something you said before I launch into your question. The budget is not approved by the president. The budget is a legislative purview. So the budget is approved by the Senate. Yet the president signs, countersigns, so that it becomes law. And coming to your question, budget is a law. The budget in Liberia, now, like you mentioned in the beginning, we've now aligned with the calendar. The fiscal budget is now aligned with the calendar. So this year, from January to December 31st, this is the budget we're talking about. And as a matter of governance and government, the budget is one of the, if not the most primary sort of functional tool of governance. Like Emeric said, budget is the government's estimate of revenue and spending, which is the national law, right? So how the government, what is the government estimating or projecting that it needs to plan over this fiscal period, and also how much revenue the government hopes to mobilize, be they domestic revenue, be they grants and other sources of revenue that comes to the budget. So the budget, one, is the law. Two, is a governance instrument that has two functional sides: one, revenue side, and the expenditure side.
Thank you, and thanks for that correction. The president actually, the Senate, the House, and the president actually signed the budget. So the budget now is signed into law. Let me go to Dehpue. What is the process? We know, we see this budget is like 500 pages. Where are these numbers coming from? What's the process to have a budget? And then it's finally
budgeting, it has in Liberia have 4 stages. You have the preparation by the executive, which of course is done by the executive branch and sector ministries and agency. Look at the policy objective set and also the priority, and do the costing. And once that is done, they bring it to the legislature, and the legislature actually review it and go ahead and say, look, this is right. And once it is done, then they go ahead and do the approval. And once they done the approval, it goes back to executive, which is the third level, and which have been done right now. Then they go for execution of the budget. And the execution process is to go up ahead and do the spending that have been approved. And the 4th stage, which is the final stage, is the auditing process to make sure that whatever that was approved actually match with what was expended. And in the end, you look at the outturn to say, okay, this is right, and this is the actual, and this is the projected budget. So the 4 stages, you got to make sure that you pass through that. So it means it's always between the executive and the legislature and the legislature. So the first and the second branch of government are fully responsible. So they actually carry on the full function, and each branch is carrying two processes that have to do. Executive does the preparation and implementation, and the legislature does the approval and also auditing process. So that's why it is in Liberia.
Thank you so much, Dehpue. And before I go back to Emeric, so to see where these numbers are coming from, let me bring Prince in the discussion. Prince, you are in Liberia, and the budget is online. And are people looking at the budget? People talking about it, or is it something that because the process is a little long, as Dehpue explained. So we had the House pass it, the Senate. Now it went back, and then for signature. What are the people saying about the budget in Liberia?
And so, thank you. So I'm really sure that the debate of the signed budget for the president, because it becomes law when the president signs it. And so I'm really sure that debate begins probably tomorrow when the media picks it up. Let me do it tonight because for technology wise, we are not that on top of issues. Yeah, the hard copy has not come out yet. It's still on the Ministry of Finance website. And let me say thanks to FOL. I'm one person who was blessed to receive the soft copy today. And so yes, I'm sure the debate will actually take the stage, the center stage on tomorrow. But people been following because I do not think that they are much different between the signed budget and that of the draft budget that came to the legislature. They are not too much different there. So some of those budget lines that are there that we're going to be going into deep to the details later on during the program. I can see I'm sure that debate will take center station tomorrow, and of course it will be discussed. But the good thing is it passed, it's a law. Our hope now will be the implementation, and like Dehpue said, at the end of the day, there should be an audit to actually show that what are those action plans that were approved actually met what they meant. So to answer the question, I'm very sure that debate will take the center station tomorrow.
Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, if you are just joining us, this is Focus on Liberia Live on Prime FM 105.5. And we're discussing the approved national budget. That's the 2022 national budget. With me, I have Mr. Emeric Benson Nicole, Mr. Ahmed Sirleaf, Mr. Dehpue, and Prince at Control in Monrovia. Emeric, let me come to you. Let me see if I can put some budget numbers on the board here, revenue sources. And you see all these numbers. When you look at the budget, and this one has 500 pages, where are the numbers coming from? How are they coming up with these numbers? Expenditure side, revenue side, and all the different numbers. Just give me an idea of where these numbers coming from. Or somebody sitting somewhere and just kind of dreaming and say, oh, I like this one. Let me pick. Because certain time came while 25 million was looking like the magic number in Monrovia. So where the budget numbers, where are they coming from? How are they coming up with these numbers?
Yeah, thanks, Dennis. I think these are the hard questions that we need to ask. All right, I do budgeting for my organization. The budget for my organization is by far more than the budget of Liberia. My organization in DC is by far more than our entire country, almost $1 billion we're doing. But this is the point, right? You go by historical data, what has happened in the past. And looking at inflationary rate, and you factor that into it, and then see if you can do a close projection or the right projection for the future. But you see, Dennis, if you look at what's happening, this is the question we always ask. What has your budget done in the past? Well, did it meet the objectives and so? But then if you look at it in Liberia, for instance, the security sector, we see that so many cases are unsolved cases over there. How will we determine that we need to increase the budget in security? Is based on history, and we have not seen it in the past. We have not seen things improved, and that's how do you measure your budget to know how well the country is doing based on what we see that are tangibles. Those things that are tangible, those are the things that we follow. Because if you have a country where people are saying they are complaining about school fees, you look at employment, you look at all of those things, what are we doing that not right within our budget? Are we there to have a budget just to pay people? No, the budget is not meant for paying people. The budget is meant for having impact on the population. And it's one of the mistakes. I think as we go on, we'll have in-depth, discussion about this and know the way forward.
Thank you. And let me go to Dehpue to one day. Each of you have your take on where these numbers are coming from. I take one sector for example. Security. Emeric already mentioned security, and they say LNP this amount, this other one this amount. How are we coming up with those numbers, Mr. Zuo? You can unmute, please.
To derive a budget figure, one thing that is clear is that there will be a budget policy prepared, and know that for this year, Maybe for a security sector, we say that we want to increase security operation, or we want to recruit more police, or we want to recruit more army to take the army strength from 2,000 to 2,005 or to 3,000. And from that, you will be able to get a figure how much will it cost for you to do that. And having done that, you look at your historical data. At the same time, you are looking at your revenue to know that indeed what you are costing, you can afford to finance it. So if you cannot finance it, maybe you got to look for other sources. So that's what is very much important. Budget's supposed to be, something that has to do with national development priority and policy priority that will drive growth and to stabilize the economy. So no one takes figure from sky and put it in there. The figure should be something that is backed by historical data or project or program earmarked to ensure that there are costs associated with it. So for example, if you talk about security, maybe since we're talking about security in the week of the election 2023, why can't we recruit more security at this time? So therefore, we anticipate there should be some growth in security operation or security recruitment. Or we may also be looking at some other regional security threat that had to do with the terrorism in the sub-region, as a result of Malay and other region, the whole ECOWAS region. How do we do it? So you got to look at the situation that is security situation that's in the country and say, okay, let's cause this, and that become your figure for you to put forth. Notwithstanding, it should be very much realistic, and you should be in the position and have the ability to pay.
Thank you so much. And Ahmed, you can add to that, but what I want you to focus on here is, and the question come up already, the importance of this discussion. And there is a comment here from Mountain Wilma Brown. He's a regular follower of Focus on Liberia. This is what Wilma is saying, and I believe Martin is not alone. He said the typical Liberian is not concerned, is not really concerned about the budget. What they are concerned about is bread and butter issue. How will the budget benefit the people? So again, well, Martin is saying the typical Liberian is not concerned about the budget, and that statement cannot be far from the truth. Ahmed, your take before you even go to.
Well, Martin is spot on. The typical citizen in any country does not know the budget allocation or number attached to a particular sector. What a budget does is the budget is supposed to spur growth. A budget is supposed to take on this major macroeconomic factors that filters down to the ordinary people, that enables the government to provide the basic services that is signed on to the social contract to provide those basic services for the citizenry, be they education, be they health and well-being, be they security, rule of law, and so on. So the budget really, people will analyze the budget, policy wonks will analyze the budget, media people will dive into it and have a sort of intellectual conversation. By the end of the day, what does this budget mean? And to answer that question, every budget has a story or has stories behind it. A budget tells what are the priorities of this country or of this government. A budget tells a story of what is, the state capability of this particular country. How is the government performing, for example? Like Dehpue said, policy and planning people, they cost out various areas and sectors where budget numbers are coming from. They do needs and gaps assessment and analysis, and do all the crunching of the numbers, all geared towards the betterment of our society. At the end of the day, how do you do public transportation? How do you ensure JFK, and all the doctors are paid well, nurses are paid well? How do you ensure that the energy sector, the electricity, which really is the number one binding constraint to economic growth in Liberia right now. How do you ensure that the budget is helping to do that? So at the end of the day, yes, we can intellectualize the budget. We talk about how it's law and policy, but the question is, when we look at the budget and look at allocations in the budget, what story is it telling us? Is it telling us that our government is a responsible government that cares about its people? Is it telling us the government prioritizes the needs of the citizenry? You know, like I said, whether it's security, education, healthcare, you can name them. So, you know, that is the question I guess we and other Liberians at home and abroad should be holding our government accountable to answer.
Thank you. And I disagree with Martin. I don't know what Emeric or Dehpue said, that people are not, maybe we are looking at it differently, right? But the budget impacts everybody. Dehpue, what's your take? Is the ordinary Liberian, may not know what the budget is, but the budget does have an impact. Well, what's
I
your
know
take?
that statement will be a historical event. At this time in Liberia, one thing that the past administration did and the current administration is doing is to ensure that what we call open budget initiative is enforced. So citizens should be informed about their budget and therefore they debate it in the legislature. So once they go before the legislature for budget debate, it's publicized across the country. So citizens know that the budgeting process is ongoing and some of them give their opinion, sometimes they do interview. The only thing that you can say is that they don't have detailed knowledge of what goes to each agency so they can be able to discuss it, unless you got a media people or specialists who can sit down and look at the sector performance and look at their budget. But the citizens nowadays, they are informed and most of them can make comments, they can make calls, especially when they are having a budget debate. So to say that they are only concerned about bread and butter, what caused the bread and butter debate to come to the citizen? Citizens will be asking questions about all this money that have been appropriated, what is coming to us. Oh, we heard that they get this money. In fact, that's one of the main reasons why people perception about government corruption is also high in the country, because when they hear the figure and from their observation, without even collecting data, they realize that but this money is so high, too much money is coming out, but we are seeing less. So like that, it became a driving force, and also they become curious to know where the money is going. And once they go after that, the citizens are always concerned. They are also doing that. That's why you have the citizen sector, which have to be civil society now, are also part of the budgeting process, and sometimes they do the civil society engagement. And some of them can do the analysis of the budget and make recommendations. But realistically, people are now understanding what a budgeting process is for our country. The only thing that there is that the way we handle it, we don't go back to them with a report. That has to do with like the outturn, how they budget the actual and the projected higher marks and why it went that way. The citizens are not informed. So that's the next stage, which has to be the next process for civil society and everyone to be concerned about. In fact, the legislature that have the responsibility to do the review of or do the audit themselves, they don't know what they approve. They cannot tell you that they know the actual amount. At the end of the year, before they do the next approval, they need to have the expenditure report in their hand to match it with what was approved. So that's the area that we need to work on now in terms of accountability and public financial management in our country.
Thank you. Emeric, parts of the budget, the two that stand out to me, there could be other parts, expenditure and revenue, right? Explain to me, based on the Liberian budget, when we say expenditure and then revenue, what are then tell me a little bit about the revenue sources. But let's talk about the two parts, revenue and expenditure. What are they and how are they apparent? What do we see in the Liberian budget when we look at revenue and expenses?
Then it's like we all have said, revenue expenses, simple. What's going to drive the revenue? Okay, what's determining the revenue for forecasting? We have to look at the old numbers. We have to go back. But what I see, I don't like to politicize this issue. That's one thing I don't like to do, because this is not in Liberia. We tend to politicize issues. And that's the reason why people get lost in understanding what our objectives, our strategy, our goals are. One thing I see in the budget, something that had no allocations before. I see it because it's around elections time. I see allocations. So my question there, if you did not have historical data for those things, you have to have some sort of explanation as to how you are able to come up with some, numbers now. For instance, the military. I see that the military, a year ago or so, no budget. But now, in no time, when I hear, I don't know what he's a general, so Prince Johnson and so bickering and complaining about those things. I'm seeing the military being allocated for, so much money. But my point there, what drove that part of the budget to say the military should get more money? I don't know. These are the questions for someone who prepares, a budget. These are the questions that I need to be asking. What is historical data to see that it will jump from zero to something? So you see, we tend to politicize these things that should be for the technocrats. And when you put politics into it, you confuse our people. But, a practical instance is how the military, we're not against Sierra Leone. We're not fighting against Sierra Leone. We're not doing major recruitment. We don't have threats from other countries. Okay. But why do we see the need to just pump so much money into the military? Those are the questions that if I'm doing a budget, I'll be asking. I said there's no historical data for that.
So Emeric, let me come in. So you're saying if, for instance, the prior year you have maybe zero or even maybe 100,000, then the following year you add maybe 2 million. You want to know why? Is that information, that data you are talking about, or the justification for that, is it captured anywhere in the budget, or is it some notes that you will ask for?
No, it should be. Look, let me tell you, Mr. Ja, there's no way you can do allocation without some sort of explanation. There's no way. Maybe you preempt something from Guinea, from Sierra Leone, or somewhere, because right now, truthfully speaking, the military, we have had some funds apart from salaries and so that we can account for. You have to pay the men in arms. We have to pay them. It's realistic. Okay. Mm-hmm. Apart from that, do we need extra money for anything? Okay. You talk about deployment. The deployment is from United Nations or other agencies outside the government. So my question there, why would you put so much money into them? Okay, when the deployment is not being paid by the government will have its own share of responsibility. But the question that why we put so much when something had not been allocated for so long to the military in respect to keeping the military intact and so those are the questions. I will always go back, Dennis. Like I said, I think it's about time. And I wrote a little bit on it, but I will have to release that article to say that we have to go to project, program, budget system, because you see all the overhead is going to be tied to a project or to a program. If it's not tied to a project or a program, there's no need for it. It's so easy to track down or wasteful spending. So easy. If you do project, program, or budgeting, that is what we need, because our government right now, into a lot of projects and programs. Yeah. So if you do like the conventional budgeting system that we have, that's the reason why we have wasteful spending. Because what I do project programs based on what the government can give, the services, goods and services to its people. That's how you be able to budget for the government. And I see we on the contrary. So we need to clean up that.
Thank you. Let me go to Ahmed and let's talk about the budget in terms of governance. So we see that in the budget, and I talk about the expenditure. In our budget, we have over 80%. 80% of the expenditure is going to recurring expenditure. 80% of the budget is going to recurring expenditure. What are those, and what does it have? How do you see the budget when we look at the recurring expenditure in terms of governance? How does it help the administration to govern?
Yeah, thank you. That's a fiscal policy question, because the budget also come from a context of fiscal and monetary policy when you talk about revenue mobilization, sources of revenue to fund the budget, and so on, and forecasting for how you are going to finance this budget. Liberia's problem has always been its inability to expand its economy, therefore its inability to expand its budget base, right? Under President Weah, we see the budget gone over a little 700 million, nearly $800 million. I'm trying to understand, I haven't really studied this budget so closely, but I'm really trying to understand how do we expand so rapidly? What are the sources of the projection? And is it realistic? Because, the question you asked about budget and governance and recurring costs specific. Recurring costs are those expenditures that the government will keep making over and over and over, year in, year out, every fiscal period, right? For example, what they call the wage bill, salary. You have to pay police officers, you have to pay nurses, doctors, teachers, you have to pay, let's say, politicians, government officials, and so on. So those expenses that are not just one-off, or they're not projectized, or they're not, some kind of special project spending budget allocation in the budget. And so recurring cost has been the actually hill of Liberia, where we have an ever expanding recurrent cost base and an inability to expand other sectors of the economy, really like agriculture, or even mining, or tourism, and be able to grow and expand our budget. You ask any politician, I've been listening to these aspiring presidential candidates. One of them said, listen, I can raise the budget to $1 billion. Okay, tell me your story. It can't add up. They haven't been able to tell me the story, how the budget can be expanded to $1 billion. We can easily do that. Perhaps that's a conversation for another day, like, how can we get to that point? But recurring costs are just your everyday expenses. For example, if how you run your household, right? You and your family, you have to pay a mortgage or your rent. You have to pay your kids' school fees. You have to buy food. You have to make sure the family is running, the house is running every day, operational. So recurring costs are really the operational bills that the government pays, whether to vendors that are servicing government services, or to basic services that the government should be providing to its citizenry, or just remuneration and salary benefits and so on. So yeah, that's what recurring costs is. And unfortunately, at 80%, you think about it. I always talk about this. I look at the World Bank Development Index report, where you can project your country's growth rate. You look at where your country is. You say, okay, if we continue to grow at this rate within 100 years or 200 years, where are we going to be? Unfortunately, for 300 years, Liberia will barely be at the bottom of, say, a middle income country, because we don't know, or at least we haven't figured out how to grow our economy, how to bring more money into our budget, and be able to finance these recurrent costs, but also put money aside for, say, capital investment, public investment, major government governance projects, and so on. That is really the challenge that we're having.
So, Ahmed, what does an 80% recurring expense tell you?
Well, I told you earlier that a budget, a national budget, or an organizational budget of anybody, any family, any organization, a country, it tells a story. It tells your priorities. So if 80% of your budget goes to recurring costs, that says a whole lot about you. Right? Look, listen, unfortunately, there could be rent-seeking practices in there. There could be an inability to really understand your risk factor, your outturn, your budget performance, and so on. So people may be saying, well, like Dehpue was outlining, right? You may have the Open Budget Initiative. I was working for a major donor in Liberia when that initiative started, and we kind of funded some of that. Well, unfortunately, the large chunk of our population is either illiterate or semi-illiterate or functionally illiterate. So there's not a disrespect to my own people, and it's just the fact. our education system is suffering. We talked about this a while ago. So people will look out in the big billboard in front of the Ministry of Finance on Broad Street. People, I know people ever paid attention to that stuff, but we don't follow the whole budget flow, the whole budget process, right? From costing to passing it into law, to implementation, to budget performance reporting and outer analysis through the legislature. And so we are now here and then go around the country and tell the story to Liberian people and ask questions so that civil society, journalists and analysts and experts are able to hold the government accountable and ask questions. So unfortunately, this is why you see the problems we have in the country. You'll see garbage litter all in the street. You will see hospitals don't have no electricity because we are 80% recurrent costs. We're not able to have money for capital projects or major public expenditure and so on.
Thank you. And Dehpue, coming to you there, same question, but my thing is government priorities. So based on the budget, if you look at our budget, if you look at revenues, you look at expenditure, what is the strength of are we getting money? Because the budget moved from 500,000 to 700,000. So it means that we are getting more money now in revenue. That's what I would think. What's the story here?
Yes, the number that is being shown from the budget, there's great marked improvement on the tax revenue side of it, which I think is a progress. System have been put in place, and we anticipated this to have been done long time. But at the same time, there are other areas we also have to be looking for support from outside, financing from external sources, and grant coming from other partners that coming into what we have. That's why I carry the number high as it is. But before I go into the reason why they increase, first of all, I want to come back on this whole issue of expenditure or recurrent expenditure. One of the things that as they did the increment, it should have actually been something that will be development interest driven, to say that we are increasing this because since we want to increase this, we want to be increasing our investment. That is what will help for the economy to grow. Now, interestingly, you are having 82% recurrent expenditure and 17.8% investment. So the question there is why this huge increment? The first thing is there are some things that we need to be looking at very critically. Now that, for example, Emeric was talking about the military. The military can have investment activity. In the first place, the military is where you have the opportunity to increase their funding, because the good news here is that our military have turned to be a very professional military. They are now doing road construction, road work. So you can increase their budget, you can increase their budget in terms of infrastructure financing, and to see how many road can they, some of the farm to market road, the feeder road that they can construct, and also help while the national road are left with donor financing. That is going to be another opportunity for the military. And besides that, you may want to also invest into the military in terms of agriculture investment, so they can do farming, they can do production, agriculture, paternal can do. So it depends on what program that the government want to do or want to prioritize. So with all of these, it shouldn't be about just arbitrary increment, or someone say because the chief of staff raised a concern. And I think the concern came just recently when this budget had already been submitted. So I don't think the increment we're seeing there is based on the chief of staff, conversation with his undermen. In fact, there's one reason why I appreciated his analysis, even though it wasn't something that was needed for the public. He was telling them the fact that our deployment overseas, besides the return it brings in terms of improvement in the image, it also professionalized the army to the extent that you see that they have other opportunity outside the build capacity of the army. So it's important that we invest into that to make sure that our military is strong enough to secure the land or to go outside and bring peace and security around the world. So that's it. But in terms of priority, I also see that in the expenditure, just targeting that as briefly stated there, they are talking about recurring portion have been distributed among sectors. They went through a sector in terms of recurring expenditure, mainly about salary and now they are talking about other discretionary expenditure that this budget seeks to address in terms of debt service, compensation, goods and services for education and health sector, and legal contract obligations. Some of these things are things that, meaning that, for example, the legal contract obligation will be that government might have had some commitment somewhere and assigned a contract is supposed to do payment, and these things have not been done, and therefore they need to make sure that they live up to the commitment and in according to the contract. The next thing that there will be that maybe there have been some donor funding, and the financing there will be that you have your share of the support, so you need to pay this amount. But even at that, what I'm still seeing here is that to have increased the budget without increasing investment activity is more of a disappointment. And I don't know why. Because the ProPo is thinking about how to create opportunity for the poorest of the poor to have access to opportunities. Now, when you're doing recurring expenditure, we will say, okay, maybe the people, the more salary you pay, they will spread it and it become an income to the household. But what is very much important is that the livelihood of the people in terms of agriculture, you need to be investing more into agriculture. How do you do it so that there will be food production, food security for the citizen? These are things that the budget is supposed to be addressing. I
All right.
see about health.
Hold on, Dehpue, before you end your time, let me put the allocation and then you can talk about it and we'll go to Emeric. Tell me about what you see, Dehpue.
Sector contribution that there, maybe
The
I could just
allocation.
allocation. Maybe what I can do is to check on my screen from here, then I can understand better. But realistically, what I see here is that public sector, because there are 11 sector of the budget. So
Yeah.
public sector carry higher, and that itself, public administration sector. Public administration sector is carrying the highest amount, which is like 37% of the total allocation. That is something that we have to be looking at.
And what is that? What is
Why
that
you?
public sector?
Yeah, public sector administration.
What is
So
it?
yeah, so what is it? It means it has to do with the compensation, what it takes to run the public sector, meaning that domestic and foreign liability that government, other obligation, or in fact, they put something like bicentennial also in the budget as well. So what the government will be spending, and that's the public sector, administration, administrative cost down there. But the question there is, what do you do? And why cause this high increase to 37.8% of the total allocation? That is huge. If you continue to increase the wage bill, it's something that you got to be looking at. Productivity, is it you are increasing because of productivity? What are you looking for? Last year or a few years back, they said, okay, let's harmonize to reduce the huge employment that were brought into the system, and it didn't really go down well. It had demotivated, discouraged some of the professional workers, so therefore productivity had declined. So why invest so much into this area? Can you find a way to invest into a sector that will help to bring about job growth, that bring about productivity, for example, agriculture, or could you go into education, which will provide opportunity for research, investing into research where there will be some new ideas and new thinking into the system to ensure that you grow. So these are things that it have to be done through priority setting.
Thank you. And still on allocation or Emeric, and then the governance guy can come in. If you look at, I mean, agriculture is among the least. So what does this allocation, this sector allocation tell you about the priority of or the problem that the government is facing that the government is trying to solve? What do you glean? What can be gleaned from this sector allocation?
But I think, yeah, Dennis, thanks. I think we're all saying the same thing. Okay, you talk about increase in revenue, the stream flow of revenue, but then we still see we have what we call in the professional area, especially in finance and accounting, in policies too, we call competing priorities. Okay, but then you see that prior year, right? As you increase your revenue intake, but then you see there's a decrease in some of those things that can spur growth. So that's a major problem. The major problem, either we don't know what we're doing, we have to bring the experts, like Ahmed, Sirleaf, Dehpue, and so we got to bring them on. I am into accounting and finance. I can look at our number and tell Ahmed, say, no, you know what? Looking at the revenue, I don't think we can approve that, but see how we can adjust your policy and other things to be able to fit in and then impact the growth of the country. This is where we have to consult with each other. This is not a one-man's situation. This is where people sit, the economists, the accountants, the finance personnel, everybody, they sit together and see how we can be able to put these numbers together to bring in, to meet with the objective of the goals of our government. And I keep saying, there's no one person who knows it all. So I'm into accounting and finance. I will go back and say, okay, you want to expand the agricultural sector, but I see that the revenue for that area is this. Oh, Ahmed, Dehpue, can you guys put a plan? Can you guys build policy that will fit within at the same time to be effective? At the same time, the people will feel it. The people will know that you are working your government. But if you have 80% of expenditure and so from just the revenue, trust me, the question is, what can you do to impact the population? What can you do to impact anyone? What can you do? Nobody gonna feel it. That's the reason why you see today. It's not that we don't agree or we disagree, or it's not that we hate this government. That's why people are not feeling the impact. People are not feeling it, Dennis. And it's the truth. We need to work together. We need to speak together. We need to sit on the phone to see how we can put our different, expertise together and be able to come up with a conclusive, program that will work for all. That people in the market will say, you know what? I came to the market today. People got money in their pockets because they are employed to buy my goods. You're gonna have people in the market if people are not employed. The same thing with unemployment today. The rate is so high. The reason why, because we're not seeing these competing priorities to be able to shift our objective and be able to serve the greater goods of the population. We're not doing those things. So Ahmed, I'm glad to be with Ahmed and Dehpue. You guys are brilliant people. They already understand the issue of our country. And I'm serious. When we start to discuss it, Dennis, the reason why I like focus on Liberia is simple. Because I don't care about the multitude. I don't care about the views. I don't care about those things. You guys are in depth. You want to understand. You want to dig deeper into the issues and discuss the issue. I'm into a finance and accounting. I will go back and look at the financial records and say, look, Ahmed, the program you got, the policy you built, and our census is going to tell you that we can't keep up with, we can't satisfy everyone in the economy. But what can we do to optimize, our utility? What can we do to make the government to be felt by everyone? What can we do? Yeah. And this is when you guys are going to come in. And I think we're going to have results if we work together, speak together, and discuss these issues.
Thank you. And Ahmed, Emeric kept mentioning policy, planning, and then I want to add governance.
Right. Yeah. So, everybody is speaking to, I usually talk about how leadership or the presidency, the executive leadership or the executive leader is like a principal of the school who has to hire the most competent teachers and looks over them and watches over all the students and ensure performance. say again, symphony orchestra conductor who knows the music and hires the best people, the best musician, different instrument, and orchestrate a beautiful production. That is the work of governance. You do all the analytical, technical thing that Dehpue has talked about in the budget. It's a balancing act. So we want to raise the budget not just for the sake of raising the budget. Look at us; we are 80% recurrent costs, right? We want to defeat that recurrent cost. Of course, we want to be able to maintain and retain the best talents and pay people competitively so that we attract the best minds and the best talents to our public sector, our government sector, right? That the high bar you saw public administration and public costs in the budget. Ideally, that's what it's about, right? But then so many other things happen in between there too, that which I don't want to go into. But then what does the budget do for people? You talked earlier about outturn. That's budget performance now. You've implemented a budget over the fiscal period. You've come back and say, well, let's do our audit. You do your audit and try to figure out how well the budget performed during the period under review. That question really goes to how well did the government serve the people? How well did the government deliver on the promises that were projected in the forecast, in the numbers that we saw allocated to these various sectors? Did the various sectors do the planning people and the policy people, both fiscal and monetary folks and other specialized experts? If you took agriculture, you have people who know agriculture. They know the type of inputs you need that will yield, a certain agricultural output. Similarly for education, the best education policy people, they made that projection and so on. So what is the budget doing for us in that respect? Those are all still in the public administration of the government, right? Well, and then public investment, Dehpue talked about that. It tells you he has experience in government, really. So it talks about public investment, the big capital investment I was talking about. You can pick any sector. You can pick road, infrastructure, dam, electricity. You can pick agriculture. Maybe this is an area that will spur macroeconomic growth that will enable the private sector, and then you have all kinds of growth spurring throughout the economy and making people happy by extension. Because if you're really competent and you know what you're doing, you know that you've put enough system in place to enhance your domestic revenue mobilization. You can collect taxes now. You can actually, and that's what LRA is doing. We're really happy that they're getting there. But what do you do with that additional revenue you collected? That's what Dehpue was speaking of. What do you do with that tax money? Does it go to recurring cost, or does it go to some kind of public investment? You pick it. We have all the needs. You can pick any sector. Liberia has needs in all of those sectors that will benefit the citizens. So if we go back and analyze the budget for this fiscal period and realize that, we barely have any investment, because if you look at 80%, what do you have left? What do you really have left? On the donor side, there are a lot of development partners and donors who don't do budget support. They don't put money in the budget because on the American side, for example, they have this thing called Public Financial Risk Assessment Framework, the PFMRAF. They come to your country, they come to Liberia and say, all right, the only way Congress will approve for the U.S. government to put budget money behind your budget to pay personnel and take some of your recurring costs is we have to be sure that your control system are working. Your procurement, your contract, your accounting processes, your auditing process, you can report that there's transparency. It's not going to waste, it's not going to corruption, it's not going to rent seeking. If you don't pass, or your sector, your institution doesn't pass this smell test, Congress doesn't allow us to put money in your budget. Okay, granted. Then the development model is we come and sit with the Liberian government, we meaning that donor, and have a conversation about what are your development plans and priority, really? You tell us PAPD, power to the people. We want to empower the poor, right? Okay, so we identify projects that can really benefit the poor in Liberia. Then the donor designs and put money in there for themselves. In budget planning, though, sometimes this budget we see is not all the dollars, the money that goes into it, really. There are budget items that are implemented by donors and other outside funders that you can account for in the budget if it's done properly. At the end of the day, all of this is geared towards empowering your people, spurring macroeconomic growth that then can lead to, sort of that snowball effect. That so many things are happening when the people are happy, that security, the agriculture is doing well, mining sector is doing well, maybe you have tourism and all of that. Folks are happy, there's a lot of money in the system. The government, the public administration too can have a little breathing room. But if you don't have the private sector doing well, you don't know how to grow your economy and do some of these things we're talking about, your people are not happy. And an unhappy population is really a dysfunctional government. So there are those things we have to take into consideration. And I'll close with this. I'm really happy that Dehpue went into the professionalization of the AFL and the things that a professional military does. It's not just, going to war and that defense of our country, right? Like you said, I mean, it's also about sovereignty. It's also about the image it projects our country out there. The deployment of our soldiers overseas, they're not necessarily financed by our budget directly. However, indirectly, we do have to pay certain payment to these international organizations like the United Nations if they're financing and taking that responsibility. Bottom line, you need security. You need a professionalized military that can also take on some of those public spending that Dehpue talked about earlier on. So I don't know the specific around the military allotment, but I just want to say it's not to bomb up the AFL. It's really to say that we want them to be professionalized, so too the police, so too the other security sectors, to ensure that there's confidence in the economy, in the country, for foreign direct investors to also come. We haven't talked about that, right? So if your rule of law sector, somebody believes that there's a sanctity of contract, for instance, they can bring my money, invest it in Liberia, enter a contract with the government or some other party. My money is protected. At the end of the day, there's fair play. If there's a dispute, I can go to court and get justice. It's really fair. And there's no corruption in it. A lot of people will come home. They will invest. Foreign FDI will happen, what they call foreign direct investment, whether by Liberian diaspora people or other international folks who now see Liberia as this investment fertile environment where they can come. Their physical security is ensured and assured, and their money is saved, and they can do business here, and the government will treat them fairly. So there's so many governance pieces that go into budget. Budget is just one of those things in your toolbox, but I would say it's the sharpest knife you have in your toolbox if you really know how to do it and do it well.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you're just joining us, this is Focus on Liberia. We are live on Prime FM 105.5. Let me bring in Prince in Monrovia. Prince, if you have a question, but my question to you there before we even start, and in fact, there's a comment here for you, Prince. After 4 months, is there an increase in economic activity? So with the after 4 months economic activity, do you see much of buying and selling, and people are getting involved in spending money and all that, which Larry referred to as economic activity? And then you can answer that and ask your question as well.
Thank you. So obviously, like Ahmed just said before he concludes his statement, obviously if the public sector is booming, if you have tourism sector booming, and people are working and getting paid, you will see laughter on the faces of the people, and you will see movement in the city. Like our city, people go to pay in Monrovia once it's after 8 o'clock in the night because there are no activities. Time past 10 o'clock in the night, people are still selling on Broad Street. Businesses are booming. Entertainment centers are booming. So yes, if the economy improves in the next few months, of course you will see smiles on the faces of people. Obviously that will happen. So Dennis, I want to build on your question you asked earlier on. The budget that is before us, the 2022 budget, looking at it, from the expert, I'm asking Emeric and Ahmed, what do you see in the budget? Is this budget realistic? I'm sure Dennis will come with the items. The allegation to maybe ministries, maybe functionary government. But what do you see? What can you say? A budget with 80% on just recurrent expenditure in country Liberia? What do you see in there? What can you see?
I can answer that real quick, Prince. Thank you, Mr. Mulbah. It's simple. It's very, very simple. What is the government trying to achieve? That's one thing. The policy man, Ahmed, going to come in and lay emphasis on that. I keep saying, I don't play in the know-it-all attitude. I just look at the past records as an accountant, listen to the policy guy, and see how I can be able to use the past, the historical data to work into his plan and prepare a budget that going to have an impact. That's all I can do. But very, very brilliant question. We've been down the road for so long, and some of the tangibles. I've been talking to people, and don't mind me, I go in depth, talk to people in Grand Bassa. I've been in Mount Barkley, other places in Mount Gibby, and so, and talk to people. This is how you also measure as to what the budget is doing. Because if the budget tells you that employment going to improve, going to lower the unemployment rate, then I think you're putting money into the pockets of people, right? But then if the market women are complaining, and then you find people school fees not paid, almost the whole country, people are crying that they don't have money to send their kids, their husbands and wives and sisters and other people are unemployed, been unemployed before this whole budget, and still unemployed after the budget is improved, even though you see the increase in revenue, okay? But then this is the question: where are we? Is the budget just to pay people to go to the ministry, the different ministries, to hang out and just hang out and do nothing? So this is where you come in and have a kind of effective and efficient, where you find people with Six Sigma to streamline a process and go to the different ministries and see the processes and procedures over there, the functionalities of those different departments, to see if there's duplicates, to see how they can cut back on the staff. Because cutting back, you see, we have a bloated salary already. All right, Prince. To me, if you cut back on those things, the simplest things that we have control over, we can now redirect money into areas that are going to function well, like the school system. Like typical example, a fellow, I'm not going to call his name. Recently in JFK, my father died in JFK because of the same system. The healthcare system is deplorable. So these are things that are touching. These are things that people feel. If you go to the hospital and say, "Oh, you're at the hospital where you have, top-notch, treatment or medical care," and so, this is the impact we are talking about. These are the tangibles we are talking about. When you go to the school system where you find our young children in high school and so can write and speak well, can write and do those things, those are things that you measure. When you find our fathers, our mothers, our sisters and brothers of working ages and so, that can put money into their pockets, that will not be beggars. They will not call abroad, call other people to be begging them. Those are things that we measure. But what do we see today? We see that it's sad, but it's the truth, that people, the unemployment rate is so high. So my question there, how do we measure the impact of government over our people? How do we measure it? How do we sit and see how effective the budget is when you have 80% of recurring expenses and so? So for me, it's more of looking at the numbers from past activities and then going into actuality, interviewing people and getting a good sample of our population to know how they feel about the performance of the government. And then we see the evidence is clear. So why do we have to pretend? That's why you see when it comes to budgeting, I don't tend to politicize it. The reason why I don't tend to politicize it is simple. People get caught up into politicizing everything in our country. But I'm in the nonprofit area. We don't politicize these issues. We measure based on performance. There are a lot of key performance indicators to show whether the government can pay back debts. I see them. They allocated, they put in the budget, they're going to cover the debt. But if you look at your financial statements, You know, the indicator shows that you can pay back. But then why do you allocate so much money into that? And that's why I suggested to Dennis, I said, the issue, we have to deal with it like bit and pieces, or else we're going to get lost all over the place. And that's what they want. They want us to get lost, to confuse our people. But it will say, okay, let's pick the agricultural sector today, the agriculture ministry, and just deal with that. And look at the budget in reference to that. We'll have a very, very, very good output. And let's pick, for instance, the defense and talk about the defense to the budget, the past history, and so, and the cases. So even with the justice ministry, okay, some of those cases, the adjudication of those cases unresolved up to this time. But we so focused on one case with, I'm a ANC supporter. We're so focused on a misdemeanor case, and when people are being murdered, you know. So let's move on. Let's move on.
Thank you. And let me bring Dehpue in. Let's look at security. So I want to bring in, I want to put a screenshot on it, but this one is for the EPS. The EPS budget compensation of employees is this one. You see the projection 2022. The budget is 6,000 for compensation and goods and services, 3 million, making it 10.3 million. Right? So you see this one is for EPS. And maybe Dehpue can tell me EPS, maybe the size of it, but this is EPS budget. I want to compare that to the police. EPS budget is 10 million, is projected to kind of the same in 2024. Let's look at the Liberia National Police. The Liberia National Police for fiscal year 2022 is 5 million. Immigration, 2 million. National Fire Service, 1 million. The training for the police, 165,000. The DEA, you were talking about people with the Zogo, you know, running after the drug crisis, 406,000. And so on and so forth. Dehpue, I don't know how familiar you are with the EPA, but let's compare, you know, the purpose of the EPAs plus the police, and look at the budget. What does that tell you with the crime rate and secret killings? What does it tell you about the priority, or what government think the problem is? Is it protecting the president or protecting the citizen? Maybe I'm political.
In fact, that's one thing. I don't know the analyst, the budget analyst in terms of security sector, how they derive for that. The EPS is actually for the protection of the first family, the president and the family, and that's the protection they provide. So there's no need to increase their budget compared to that of police budget. So there's something that they need to define here realistically. So for me, I think those are some of the things that the national legislature shouldn't have approved. They needed to have gone through it and vividly, you know, look at what is there and say, no, we cannot do this. The next thing that there is that you will note that we are going to election. Police deployment, police training should be a priority. Why would EPS that is not going to be deployed, not doing anything, have more budgetary allocation than that of the police? Besides the police, you also have the situation with the National Drugs Agency. I will tell you this. This is where sometimes our support from donor reliance or donor dependency has increased so far. If you really meant well to reduce the drugs cartel, which is increasing, in fact, right now is at the highest peak according to security experts, you need to invest more money into that, and to ensure that you equip them, you ensure that they are logistic for them. Why should you give them, you know, hundreds of thousands and you give millions of dollars to EPS? Well, these are things that realistically, I know something that this budget, when you look at it, it's almost like is protecting the presidency, and these are intended to misapply this money to some other activity that is not publicly known. Because
one thing is that the EPS got less strength, they got less manpower than the police. So if you have to do per capita expenditure by security, EPS you have huge per capita expenditure because a lot 10 million for them. They are just huge number of people. Something is wrong. You have to look at that. Besides that, if you are arguing the issue of logistics, what is the reason of giving EPS more logistics than the police? So what would be your reason? So that budget has serious problem. Besides that, the presidency is being overly protected, and that's one thing I can say clearly here is that this thing also defy the proper agenda that all of us contributed to and we wrote today. For security of the state is very much important. That's what gives confidence to investors. You cannot be hearing about people getting missing. You don't have police logistic. You cannot be hearing about armed robbery. Then you giving money to EPS versus police are supposed to go after. Some communities, for example, I live in Duazon. Duazon police deployment. If you want police officer to come to Duazon, forget about it. Because it will be difficult for you to find them. They will either come from shuffling, 2-3 guys will be there, no logistic for them, or you call the zone 5 area. I mean, it's just a zone 8. It's just a difficult thing. So why appropriate so much money for EPS? It's simply saying that that's the presidency protection right there. And when the president office already have huge appropriation in terms of travel, everything. So that is not proper. That budget is not proper. It is actually an elitist movement to build empire. It's not the right approach. I could talk about security, talk about it. Okay, the NSA, they do a lot of operation externally and internally. Yes, you can increase, but not compared to that of EPS. Now let me drill down to some other issue that to me it should have been a priority to the government. One thing in terms of security, that why you need to logistic. They needed to invest more into something that has to do with technology. For example, we can look at crime zone and say, look, as of now, there's no need for to deploy more police, but we can have a satellite. We can have a satellite control system. We can have a camera control system in a certain location that will be monitored. I'll be monitoring the crime in that area. So instead of deploying more manpower there, you just focus, on the camera and be able to pick the criminal out. That's a good investment. We can say that. But where we are right now, I think that's a missed priority. The next thing that there is that you have the Ministry of State that also covered the EPS. Their budget is already huge. Then you carry almost everything. That Liberian people know that we are not protecting an individual, we are building state.
Yeah. And let me add, for the EPS, the budgetary allocation is 11 million. For NSA is 11 million. EPS is 10 million. And of course, you saw the National Police, that's 5 million.
So then is the question, I'm sorry for interrupting. The question, are we increasing the size of the EPS to justify what's there to justify the increase? What's there? That's why I said, from the beginning that then is the budget is more than just looking at it from the face value. It's going deeper to see the attachments of the history. Has there been recruitment in the EPS to say, okay, justify that maybe there's a threat to the president? Where we see there's a threat and we analyze that threat and say, okay, it's reasonable to add the budget or to increase the budget. These are the things, and I agree with Dehpue, right? Dehpue is spot on. Okay. When you politicize the budget is not a political, people will use as a political tool, but numbers don't lie. If you tie in the numbers to the budget, it's different from politicizing. You politicize it, but how do you justify it? That's when you see the accountants and the finance personnel. I'm not talking about Ahmed right now because Ahmed will have his program, but then the accountant and the finance personnel will say, Ahmed, what you saying? We don't have the revenue to support that. And because Ahmed is a policy guy, he's very good at what he does. He will say, Emeric, yeah, but we can tweak it. We can fix it to make it, more transparent, and for it to work. We can decrease the budget to what we have the revenue inflow. These are the things we are talking about. People just go and cut and paste numbers and go on the budget increase and do decreases. And so they do these things, but we don't justify why it's done. And that's why you see Dehpue, I agree with Dehpue on those issues that he just explained. So thank you. I'm sorry for coming in, but I just wanted to throw light, on those issues.
Right, and Ahmed, let me bring you in. I'm ready to talk about the national security, right? NSA. So
Yes.
here's the explanation. It says intelligent assessment for the preparation of the 2023 national elections, increased collection on terrorist organization targeting Liberia and West Africa, increased domestic collection on economic crimes across Liberia, and impact on illicit financial flows, increased foreign intelligence collection due to recent military intervention in the Mana River Basin, improved maritime security intelligence, increased collection against drug trafficking in West Africa, and money laundering. So based on that, we have the NSA have 11 million, the EPS, they have their own justification, 10 million. You have the National Defense, the Ministry of National Defense is 2 million, and the National Army is 5 million. Ahmed, what's the priority here, and what is at stake here for this kind of allocation from a policy planning and governance standpoint?
Well, I mean, it's not just policy planning governance standpoint. It could be from economic standpoint.
Ready to tell me, Yeah.
Hold on 1 minute. Go ahead.
Yeah. So earlier on, I began by saying budgets tell stories. A budget tell us what the particular country's priorities are, and what policy direction or policy options a particular government prioritizes and why. Right. And so what we're seeing here is an inability of a government or a country, for that matter, to really address its recurrent issues. I think that the harmonization attempt that happened, and again, I don't have any in-depth analysis of this, so I may be off on this, but such a harmonization happens in order to, to create savings. So that you have the savings to do public investment, and public investment, by that the economists, the Dehpue and others will tell you, is really how do you invest in the people? How do you invest in those priorities that will provide and address the concerns of the citizens, and that will better people's lives, right? Will increase household income, will increase, better outcome, education outcome, better health outcomes, and more agricultural yields and expansion in the economy in different sectors, to be able to, as a governance matter, to address critical issues then that stabilizes your country. Because I said earlier, a happy people is a prosperous people, is a prosperous country, right? You may not even need such a huge budgetary allocation for, say, EPS or the presidency. If your people are really happy, if your private sector, the public sector, the government is working to create those that enabling environment for the private sector to thrive, to create jobs and help young graduates from university, young people in the country to realize their dreams, to be able to start careers and develop careers. Unfortunately, sometimes we do arbitrary planning and arbitrary budget process in Liberia. I just have to say people criticize, but we have to speak up on these issues and point out, and so that we can better our country. If we don't do that, I think it was Dr. Martin Luther King who said, and I can paraphrase the quote here, that uh, uh, if the real measure of a man or person is when you stand up in time of crisis, when there's tension, when there's uncomfortability. We don't know your real measure when things are normal and comfortable, right? And we don't know. But do you stand up? Do you take a stand? Do you take side? Do you share your knowledge? Do you speak up? Do you help to better your people, your country's condition, your people's condition? I think that is the endeavor in which we engage with here right now. Sometimes these numbers we're seeing, they're really arbitrary numbers. The people don't like when I say, yeah, you ask them, though, show me the evidence, because they call it budget statements, right? That's why you guys call it, you're the accountants and financial people. Well, I mean, I call it budget justification. What kind of needs assessment did you do? What kind of analysis did you do? What is the policy tool that then allow you to make the kind of projection that you've projected? Well, can you show me that you have to forecast some kind of subsidiary budget, because each of these sectors too have its own budget, right? And you have to think about it. So each of these budget allocation, think about it as an entity, as an institution that is driving a particular sector, and then they feed into the national governance system. So they have their own sub budget, what is salary and all the remuneration and different expenditure, be they recurrent or some type of public investment, I don't know. But that's what a budget should do as a tool of governance, to really be allow the government to plan in such a way that the government invests in its people, invest in the safety of its people, whether investing in security, whether creating the safety and environment where foreign direct investors can say, I want to be in Liberia. It's so safe. I can drive from Buchanan to Monrovia, from Foya to Monrovia. There's no problem being there. I have no concerns. However, if you're hearing about clandestine and extrajudicial killings, and that there are no conclusive results, investigative answers to these deaths, anyone would think twice if they want to be in such a country, right? Because anybody can really get in cahoots against you, and next thing you know, you're gone. You're gone. So think about it. Investors are not coming, because the budget is not just about just the government alone's business. A budget sends a signal to non-government institutions, sectors like the private sector, like outside people, foreign governments, foreign investors who may want to have investment or business interest in your country. All of these really help to prosper your population, to prosper your citizenry. That's the contract, the social contract the people enter in with a government. So that your job is to look out for me. Your job is to go and seek my best interest. Your job is to make sure that I live in safety, peace, and security. My children are safe. They can grow and go to school and have an opportunity to have a career and live a productive, comfortable, healthy life. If you're not doing that, if your budget can't do that, because it all goes towards salary, remuneration, some kind of, it's basically transaction costs for somebody being a politician, then it tells me your priorities are misaligned, and we have to investigate those priorities.
Okay, Dennis, 1 minute here. Let me just come in 1 minute. You just told me about the NSA role in the financial, intelligence, almost carrying on the function of the financial intelligence, talking about going after money laundering. Then, interestingly, go and see the budgetary appropriation for the entity that is responsible for money laundering, which is the Financial Intelligence Unit. This group has practically, nothing, because they don't even have 500,000, and they are the one responsible for money laundering, and they are the one that are the investigators. So, how did you derive at this kind of a support or decision, on the budget? So I think we are not The appropriation for financial intelligence unit here that I'm looking at here, interestingly, is 1.5 million. Imagine that. $1.5 million.
Yeah.
And they are the one responsible for money laundering and investigation.
And terrorism and all that.
And terrorism.
I was asking someone, I said,
they are the
have
one
you ever
responsible.
seen, because Presidential Affairs Ministry is almost maybe next to finance. I was asking someone, I said, have you really been a boss and you saw someone who said, I work at the Presidential Affairs Ministry?
Yeah.
I mean, who are these people that work at the
terrorist financing is terrorist financing is not investigated. Yeah, NSA is part of the team to investigate, but the authority responsible for such investigation is the Financial Intelligence Unit. Yeah. So why deprive them? Why castrate them? And you just jump up somewhere and get EPS almost all of the money. Another thing which also puzzles me here, realistically, these guys are the ones who are currently even investigating. They are working along with the Treasury Department to investigate the money laundering case with Kente. They don't have resources, but you have different entities.
I don't want to be political, but you see the point. You defund them so they have nothing, and then you go ahead and start stealing. But let me go to Prince, who's on the ground there. Prince, what are you feeling here? Because this is what we are saying. For EPS, 2022 is 10.3 million. For NSA, 2022 is 11 million. For the National Police, 2022 is 5 million. For immigration, 2 million. They're talking about terrorism. For fire service, 1 million. See why we can put up any fire? To train the police, 165,000. You, Prince, you are there. What are you saying from the police based on what they are getting for training, for even the morale? You know, we always say when you go to the police, they say you should buy gas. Isn't this justified when you look at the budget?
Yes, so I think we have great financial experts on the show tonight. And so the question you asked, Dennis, the realities I see on the ground. And like Ahmed was saying, sometimes, especially for those of us in Liberia, it's just saddening for us. Because I myself, in the other police officers, senior police officers, as a matter of fact, senior police officers, and they have told me the challenge that the police is faced with. And so with the budget line for this budget year, just tells you that I do not even know what I was thinking as we approach the 2023 elections. And trust me, this election will be tense. You will need the police to be well equipped. You will need the numbers to be increased. In joint security operation, you do not depend on the immigration, the DEA to join the police, as joint security. You didn't do that. The police should have the manpower, the equipment. They should be well prepared. But that is not the case in Liberia. And then one of the reasons why people do not respect our police officers is the way they appear. The way some of them appear. And it is not their fault. And so, some of the questions you asked me, Dennis, so now we do not let us answer those questions because we are here. We see it on a daily basis. If you can even be at your house, if something happening, you call at the depot, the person on ground will say, I cannot live here because only my 1 year in Monrovia here. Yes. And he can do nothing about it. Yeah. And so, but Dennis, before we take calls, I want to ask one question to the panelists or to the guests on the show. Mr. Dehpue, the way you sound, I already know that you're feeling somehow. But here's my question to the both of you.
He wrote the PAPD, so he knows what's in it.
Yeah, so this is my question. I don't know This is a budget that is crafted or that is drafted by the executive. It comes to the legislature, the people's representatives, the people's direct representative, the people's deputy. And then they do the reviewing and approval of the budget. It just goes to the president for signing the law, then it becomes law. Now, what you see in this budget tonight before you, who should we blame here? What is wrong with us? I mean, those are the people that we elect so that we cannot speak. Those are in Grand Judea, in my hometown, home country, that cannot come to Monrovia. They expect our lawmakers to speak for us, and they read those figures. In fact, so that I can say this batch of legislature is blessed with some of the brains, on top of accounting's brains. We're blessed with them. I mean, I would just call the names. You have the accounting Kun, you have Hassan Solo, you have Jason Sibo. The names, the name goes on. I mean, the list goes on. What is responsible for what is wrong with who do we blame? Is it the presidency or the legislature?
Thank you, Prince. I think
all the people who keep voting for them.
Prince, are you?
Yeah. Or I'm getting all the voters. Who do we blame here?
Okay, what I can say here, realistically, from what I'm reading, you realize that the legislature actually went ahead and increased its own budget to 64 million.
Yeah.
That is the level at which you could see that there's lack of leadership on the national legislature, because you see the executive, you're supposed to scrutinize the executive to say, look, what is there for my people? What is there for the people? But instead, they're saying what is there for me, as I see it right now. The national legislature does not have any investment activity. It does not have anything activity that is supposed to be under the public administration services, which of course the public sector administration. They just go to work. So by right, for them to look at Ministry of State having $20 million and looking at Ministry of State historical data does not reach to 20 million, you ask question, why are you going this far? That's what they're supposed to do. But instead, I think what is here now is that the legislature decided to say, you know what, let's negotiate. Since you are taking this, I'll take this. Civil Service Agency, CSA. I see here that Civil Service Agency budget is $9 million. In as much as you can see that, what specific thing are they going to be doing? That means you still have many deployment, training, education, just to train civil servant. You get in $9 million. The next thing that is just puzzling to me, when you look at the budget, it's just like, why are these guys just arbitrarily taking money assigned to certain area without doing investigation? The office of the vice president is carrying $4 million. Just one person office is carrying $4 million. Go there and see how much went to the Ministry of Agriculture that's supposed to feed the citizen. And besides the legislature taking the 64 million, the question here is, in fact, recently they have decided to increase the number of staff at the legislature. What special activity that's going on that you're recruiting, you're increasing number of staff when you don't even have a good computer system? That building is supposed to have archive that is supposed to document every conversation. Yes.
Mirabro was there to clean the bathrooms.
Yeah, besides cleaning a bathroom, I'm talking about archiving record. Whatever deliberation they have, the phone that they used there was given by a donor. To maintain it is still a problem. Then you are now seeing yourself, increasing number of staff, productivity to increase or for it to decline. The more people you have, there will be a diminishing marginal productivity. So why are you taking additional labor in that kind of area? Well, it is something. When you look at the budget, this whole noise about, we raised the budget to 700 million is nothing much but to just empower certain people and to see how best they can prepare themselves for 2023. Yeah. But I can tell you this. Ministry of Finance and Development Planning. Ministry of Finance and Development Planning is having 150 million. Tell me something.
JFK is 6 million.
Dehpue,
Yes.
that's the reason why I said, and I'm not. That's the reason why I said the budget this time around is more political. If you look at the trend of the budget, right, and you look at the elections, if you look at the presidential, minister of state and presidential affairs, right, and you look at finance, look at their budget right now, and look at their past activities and see the increment. All right, you can see and you know that this is more political. I'm sorry to say that's why I don't get into the politics of these things, but we have to be fair, we have to be analytical, we have to be direct, transparent with our people. Like you're saying, right? There's no reason, nothing to justify the increment other than it being election time, so people need more money in their pockets. Yes.
Emeric, since you are from the opposition ANC, let me put you a little bit.
Okay.
Why is the ANC not talking about this, but they are talking about who's sweating in court? Who fingers?
I think the reason why is simple. The reason why this whole case came about because of the distraction from these issues. And I think you're right. We're going to start. This is why we and myself and other people from ANC we started picking up on these issues. And you're 100% right, Dennis. We should talk more about these issues. Yeah, but we need to talk. We need to focus more on these issues. What happened? The budget we have not received.
Emeric, they are talking about coming sweating in the court, and that's the argument.
But I think the point there is simple. The reason why the government is doing this with the case, the bogus case against coming, to create a distraction that will focus more on the case and then pay less attention to these things.
But Emma, the case was just a recent case. I mean, our political institutions, political parties really don't have institutionalism, I'm sorry to say. Because a political party, an opposition political party, you don't have to be in office to really govern as well. A political party, you can see in other countries, right? What oppositions do, you're in the opposition, you have a policy, you have a national plan, you do analysis, you have experts speaking to issues. Yeah, but you don't do any of that. All you guys do is say, I'll give me state power, I'll do better. But you don't tell us how and what is it. And I'm speaking general.
But I'm not. I need to come in because I don't want to forget my train of thought. I'm not.
In flight, and my train of thought as well. I don't want to lose it. I'm just saying.
Okay, that's it. I will talk with Ahmed. I'll give you a chance.
I'm not speaking to your political party alone or per se. I'm speaking about my country's tragedy, the travesty of institutionalism or the lack thereof, right? Usually it's about personality politics. You subtract Mr. Alexander Cummings from ANC, there's no ANC. You subtract Mr. Barker from UP, there's no UP. Mr. Weir from CDC, there's no CDC. So what's happening is these people don't have institutionalism, right? In other words, they don't really do the things that a political party should be doing, should be governing, should be advocating, should be developing parallel policy and governance system, and then pushing and holding the incumbent government, the incumbent administration's feet to the fire to say, be accountable because you promised to say do X, Y, Z, and you're not doing it. Any political party. So I'm sorry. The reason why I got animated, but that was the thing you said. Well, this case was meant to distract. It may be so. But prior to this case, I didn't really see any substance.
In order to
I gave you
the budget, I think we have to continue with the budget issue. Then
I think I gave you guys fair chance to talk on the issue of ANC. Okay, or ANC not having. I would say that's your perception, but I would say your perception is wrong. We all are competent people in ANC to be on the whole, the high office and so. And I will tell you that a lot of people are highly educated more than Mr. Cummings, and truthfully speaking. But when you have a standard bearer, you have to focus on the agenda too of the party as well as the standard bearer, the way he sees things. That's not wrong. But to say that ANC, I know too many people personally that are highly educated than Mr. Cummings, that even more qualified than Mr. Cummings. It's just that Mr. Cummings has been placed in a position where people see him to be this person, but I can tell you this. I can name over 10, 15 people that I know that are highly qualified than Mr. Cummings. Okay? So that's not a true statement.
Thank you, thank you.
But
You missed
Prince,
my
yeah,
point.
Okay.
You missed my whole point. It's
we,
not
we,
about.
we, we almost
Mr.
out of
Ja,
time. I want us to take some
Mr.
calls here. But
Mr. Ja,
no, Dehpue, hold on. Let Ahmed end his turn because
but
Yeah,
I didn't really go through, you know. I was speaking, but I will keep quiet and listen.
we have 18 minutes to close. I want us to have time
Emeric,
to
I'm
take
saying
calls.
you missed my point. It's not about Mr. Cummins per se. It's because you said the current court case is what's preventing ANC is a plot to
I,
this. I'm just saying through our country, there's no political institutionalism. People come to a political organization for that moment. They have resources or whatever it is, or the personality is domineering, and people focus on that person. They don't build institutions. They
Yeah.
don't think of
but
institutions. So
Thank you,
okay,
Ahmed. Let's
okay,
leave it
okay.
at that. Let's
Yeah,
leave it at that.
Mr.
Prince,
Ja, I'm
Prince, do
still
we have
on this budget analysis. Please, I just want to raise a little ceiling concern
okay,
here.
so is this maybe
Uh,
you're not there internally to know what's going on? Okay,
yeah,
okay,
hold on, Emeric. Let's go back
okay,
to the
Emeric.
budget.
Mr. Ja, there's something that we all gotta be is very much alarming. The judiciary branch of government
Yeah.
is where we expect the interpretation of our law. We need to pay the judges. We need to make sure that this in fact the rule of law is anchored on this democratic branch of government. Guess what is appropriated for this branch of government? $18 million. So imagine Ministry of State budget is more than the entire branch, where you got the judges, you got the court system, everything across the country. Their budget is actually less than Ministry of State budget.
And
Can you
who are the
imagine?
employee of the Ministry of State? Have you seen one?
So
Mr. McGill?
it's
I
a
don't want to go. I
it's
don't
a
want to. I'm
conversation.
just. I'm concerned
It's
because
right.
the
And look at,
lawyers, the court system, to make sure that your courts are very effective adjudication of cases, and you got so many cases on the docket. But in terms of appropriation, you gave them $18 million and just gave one ministry that's just supposed to be responsible for taking care of the president office $20 million. So now you also see that the national legislature, that's one thing you gotta look at. National legislature beside their staffer, that's 103 staffer, 103 individual. They receive 64 million. When it comes to the judicial system, you got judges across the country.
Yep.
So they and the legislature, the judges and the legislature have the same, almost the same in terms of responsibility. They are on par. So you see that there are more judges than that of we don't have what is going on.
those are ministries. They are more. I mean, the judicial branch. They have more people. Education, for instance, have employee in every part village of, but still no Ministry of Finance. There is only in Monrovia has 150 million. What
Ministry of
is
Finance
going
got people
on?
across the country, but my surprise there is that for their budget to jump from this is just much unbelievable. That the Ministry of Finance budget went to 150 some more from 87 million dollar to 152 million.
But that's the arbitrariness I was talking about. A
But
budget tells
who
a
is
story.
checking these things? Nobody. But let me take our two calls here, and Prince, get ready to bring on callers there. But let me take two calls here. Callers, quickly, please talk for 40 seconds each. Let's start with Kesali Double. Kesali, hello. Just go straight to your point. I know you. Please, no more JMB.
Thank you very much for that, John.
Yes, sir.
I'm not talking GMB this time around. What we're talking is very important with GMB.
Yeah.
John, thank you very much, and thank you very much to your guests. It's a whole lot. For travelers, for us, the budget, what we have started implementing this budget, because it is projected, the projection should have gone towards something substantial. And we have brought in some return on investment, where it was invested the extra $250 million or plus to bring some return and help us to meet our projected goals. But instead, sadly, if you look at the budget, take a subtraction of the past budget of the president's office, the legislature, office, the speaker and the president, you'll notice that the entire $200 million went to the 5 offices. Instead of us giving this money to the Ministry of Agriculture to have invested from this money in the rural area to take from our poor farmers for the poverty, and buy some of their perishable goods from them and selling it on in return to be able to have some return investment. We use all of this money on recovery for expenditure by just giving them to the president's office, the vice president, and the 5 officials. It is sad, and the budget is that it is a complete mess. And I wonder how the legislature really look at this budget and actually find this budget. I can't get away. Going through this budget is that I have 40 seconds, but it is terrible.
Thank you. The next caller here is that JJ Kawi. I hope you're not Duke calling say JJ Kawi.
Hey, Dennis, this is Duke. How are you?
All right. Duke, go ahead.
Your guys have done a brilliant job. There's nothing much to add on this. Emeric, Sirleaf, and I don't want to mispronounce my other brother's name, but he always comes solid. So, kudos to him. But just watch more quickly. First and foremost, there will be an official ENC response coming. It's not only going to be based upon criticism. You will have solutions, like we've always done. But something that Sirleaf said that I wanted to quickly just, go ahead and provide some clarity to. The ANC has been the model of a responsible party in the opposition. That's why when it comes to this issue, Mr. Cummings will release a statement. He will sometimes come, and have public appearances, and then not only criticize, but also offer suggestions. As of recent, there was a press release from the ANC and even a communication from the Cummings concerning this budget issue and their recommendations in terms of things. So that's kind of official. Secondly, and perhaps finally, sometimes it gets so draining talking about the same thing. Here we are now going to the final year of the field we are presidency, still talking about money, a budget that was approved by people in our lawmaking body and the government and all of that. This is a continued problem. The Liberian people will have a choice to make sure to make the right decision in 2023. We will continue to do this as a responsible opposition to provide all of the things that we think are necessary to educate our people. But I think we've done that. I just wanted to reiterate.
Thank you.
All know that the budget is canned, and we just wanted to touch that one quickly. So thank you.
Thank you. And Duke, I want to invite ANC people so we can talk about the ANC plan and how the ANC will make this thing right. I'm tired of hearing people talk about framework document and coming sweating and black eye sleeping. I'm tired of that.
I know. Trust me.
All right.
Then you will get a radical policy, policy that's going to be rolled out. Trust me, it's
thank
going to
you.
come out there. But thank you, Dennis. I appreciate you.
Thank you. Let me get my last caller here. Prince, you have any caller? Let me take Evis for 39 seconds. Evis, go ahead. You're live.
Thank you so much, Mr. Guy. Quickly, thank you again for the show. Again, it's really important that we talk about these things. The substance of what's going on in the country is really important. Quickly, I want to talk about the budget. One of the things that I feel like is really missing within that budget is the lack of any social, any social programs. What we call welfare in America. A lot of our people need social programs to help them, get through their day-to-day life, and we're thoroughly lacking when it comes to social programs in Liberia. Secondly, I would just kind of disagree with the guys when it came to the military. When people talk about why is there so much money there for the military now, as compared to the last few years. The military is a sensitive part of our country, so we're not going to really, disclose all those information, the sensitive information on what the money is specifically going to be used for. So I think when it comes to that, maybe that part of it is probably going to be classified. So I think we shouldn't dwell too much on that part of it. But again, overall, I guess people are wondering how can the budget benefit them. The reality is there's no direct social programs that's going to the people to help them with their, with their rights or the table issues, which is feeding themselves every day. So I think overall the budget is what you expect from a government like Liberia, where most of the budget goes to the government officials and running the government, and the rest of it is going to many, small little projects here and there. That's who we are as a country. That's what we have there. So I think maybe somebody coming in like a communist could maybe bring something different in the budget, but that's how it's been for the longest time. Thank you for taking my call. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Emeric. Thank you. Mr. Mulbah, do you have callers from Liberia?
No, not yet. So let me just announce the number 0770-1051, 0770-1051, or 0777-053336, 0777-053336. Those are the numbers you can call to be a part of the program. So before I leave, let me just ask one question, maybe get a note of it. So, Mr. Dehpue and Ahmed Sherry, do you see a potential budget shortfall from what is before you tonight? More closely, you can answer that question. Do you see a budget shortfall?
Dehpue, my man Amara was full of budget shortfall, and you were.
Yes, realistically, I don't want for people to be very optimistic about the budget. We need to rig certain area at this time because.
So I think I'm gonna call it. Can I try this one?
Yes.
You ask the question, you leave it to record.
No, why?
Yeah, let him take the call up.
Okay, go ahead.
Good evening.
Good evening.
What is the name? Where are you calling me from?
This is always done.
Go ahead.
Yeah, all these things just looking for the issue, especially when it comes to your budget. Where is the budget we should put out national getting back to the ground for like that aspect. So we elected them there to our interest. Every one of us cannot go in and out of this. It was back to our country. So this is why we prepared a group of people to make that decision. But for them to distribute the national taking the money is highly frustrating. And you know what is going on in the country? The people we expect to put the pressure on the government, which is the opposition, they should be checked to make sure they can't like that and put the government on the ground, put the pressure. There's no pressure on the government. The government better give the government here of telecommunication pressure on it. Then people are getting on the issue of food process.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Let's take one more. Dennis, I'm sure you get a caller, right?
A little bit, not quite, but go ahead.
All right, we'll have one more there. Good evening. Your name, where you calling from? Go ahead, Lingo.
Thank you for the all important improvement. You know, I'm kind of disappointed. I thought that the increment in the budget to 700 million was going now. But to see that there are not too much disparity in terms of the distribution. Let's look at the police. Let's look at the police, for example. I'm always talking about the police budget is only around 2 million or 1 million.
It's 5 million, but then a month to 3 years, 500,000.
Give us strength. And we have no guys in the ring and in the first down, protecting and how to call it, then we give you the kind of teaching. Look at immigration. Look at the justice. Then you have the NSA taking 11 million. You have the bishop taking 152 million. I don't know whether that's something the president went there and established the kind of budget. What do you expect other people to do? You look at the judicial, it's 18 million. You look at the legislature, it's the 4 million. I think one of the planning was very bad at the council, just to take the thing for justice purposes. I think that was the intent.
Thank you. Thank you so much. He's the president. I don't know whether this is a way for your love because Dennis, did you get the caller as well?
Not really, but if you can summarize both of them.
All right. So I mean, it's not a question, but they just express disappointment in the budget as it has been explained by us on the radio. Like I said, he thought the increment in budget could have benefited Liberians, but it's unfortunate that the direction it's going, it shows that Liberians were not prioritized. And I think one more.
No, I think we are out of time because.
All right.
And I want to also mention.
Take the local call.
Take the local call, Dennis. Take one more, please.
All right. So yeah, one more is hanging here. And one more
I
from
told
here.
them to improve the quality of the phone. I am not getting the color. That's why it's frustrating.
So Dennis, I think this is okay. Hello. How you doing? Dennis, can you get the color?
Yeah, this is South Africa. Not going to be from Central Town. Let me commend the guys from the United States of America, and let me commend the friends. I think Liberians are listening to life. To listen to the budget. The budget that belongs, it's a national thing that belongs to everyone. In that budget that I speak, nobody is a budget to the legislature. And as I speak to you, there is nothing there for short-term job for the poor people to get something to do. People graduating from the university, the city, as I speak to you now, no people in high school that just graduated at in-house, there is no vacation job, no money in the budget to accommodate these people. 162 million to the finance ministry. For what? I'm disgusted with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Charlie. A long time. Thanks so much for being there. So, Dennis, how it looks like you still got problems with
one more caller because everybody we want to hear from people in Morocco.
Yeah, so you can call us on 0770 1051 if you're following 0770 1051 or 0777 05 33 36 0777 05 33 36 once more 0770 1051 0770 1051 or 0777 33 36. One more call. They will call it on the show tonight. A caller is here. Good evening.
Yes, well, thank you very much, brother.
I'm good. What is the name? Where are you calling me from?
Yeah, thank you very much. Friends, you know, there is something they call conspiracy theory for another time. When leaders are conspired against the state and result in Liberia. Friends, it's a clear call that our Liberian leaders will not love this country. All the ones that can seek us for work. I mean, you have known, we are little witnesses to our testimony. Why will you have leaders in your country that most of them children are in school and abroad? You see that put leaders in that? No. Please, why will you have leaders in your country that some of them have put the hospital in Ghana or not in Liberia? You think that that's how you have to. So what has happened is that we are the point that we are the actual members of our country that the people of the government are who support and produce a kind of leadership that we feel like we do. But for our national leaders, we should not mind that they are expecting to export us from the way that we are not educated, we are ignorant, so we use the way at the end of the day to convince us to the legislative process so that the conspiracy theory is better to lie. So we are also unite ourselves and all the way and make sure that
thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So, Dennis, let me tell you the last one. Good evening.
Okay.
Good evening.
You're the last caller for tonight. Your name, where you call us from?
I'm super escalating and calling from the community.
So, you're the last caller. Go ahead. Let
me say to the Liberian people, you know, we always continue to invest in people because we are not sincere in making decisions. There are periods to be changed, or we have to kind of the leaders that we want. We have to change ourselves. You know, the bunch of people that are academic, if we get the opportunity tomorrow to share into the cities, that's the way it's happening. The legislature are doing to provide a national king. Why are you think the start budget and need to come get a green mentality? And those guys who are outside government are making a change. If you go there, it will not be that different. So the blood problem is a hell of a problem that we all need to get to our feet and consider, keep it to our heart, everyone for the country to be.
Thank you.
Because we hear people from telling the world, then we condemn it. But we get the opportunity to serve to the same thing. So I think we got to get our need to pray and look, give it to our heart to make a serious decision as to how we want the country to be and in all lives of ourselves. So I want to say thank you to budget as it is. People are condemning today want to put that in care of the sin create mentality. So I want to thank you for giving us anything. Let us pray to change ourselves.
Thank you so commercial. Dennis, I think we can stop right there. More calls are coming, but we can be here up to 12 midnight.
So it's not
I'm sure
format,
librarians,
right?
like I said, the debate will be wide tomorrow. Since we opened it tonight, I'm sure many radio stations will discuss it more. So yes, I think you heard some of the callers.
I think all of you have heard about the educational sector, right? Free education, AYF fees, and all that, right? Dehpue, you have a chance to look at the education budget. So for education, when it comes to universities, community college, high schools, primary, you know the amount? 20.
I am looking at the education sector right now.
And it's 92 million.
That's 92 million. Interestingly,
and then it's going to go down next year to 78 million.
Good. That's what I want to speak to right now. The Ministry of Education itself has, let's say, 10 billion increment in budget as we speak. But you look at variation, I don't know based on what, you see that Tubman University has higher increment. The University of Liberia budget remains almost the same.
And how much is that?
It's 17,600,000.
Yeah.
So now, realistically, what we're saying here clearly is that in as much as the Ministry of State budget increased by over 30%, Ministry of Finance over 40%, all the other ministry, it's so frustrating that education that's supposed to drive the human resource capacity development, having slight increment in some places, he had a decline. And then I went down, disappointing the Ministry of Agriculture budget and that of the Vice President office have the same budget, almost. We got 4 million. Ministry of Agriculture is but the entire agriculture sector has 7.8 million. The entire sector of agriculture. So when you look at agriculture, you get 7.3 million. You get in 7.3 million. Carry is 1.6 million. Ministry of Agriculture is 4.6 million. Meaning that all these things we're talking about, President prioritized agriculture, the growth of the economy comes from agriculture, is just a waste of energy.
Okay, you don't have the money to defeat us.
So that is but I will still go back to where I was before the caller came in.
Yeah, quickly.
We having serious problem in the international community. In fact, the citizens are having problem because lack of judges in court. All the court system in the country, you see that this is the challenge we have. I'm so disappointed that there will be appropriated $18 billion while ministry and agency that's supposed to be just doing sector work are receiving more than judiciary as a branch of government. These are professional lawyers. People who work in judiciary, they are not people like the way people come from legislature. Anybody can be elected, whether you high school graduate or not. To become a judge, you must have gone to college and obtained a degree and go back to law school and obtain another law degree. Some of these people also got master's degree in law. And you're telling me that the branch of government only carry 18 billion? That is something we need to review. If we really mean well to ensure that the legal system is functional, we're talking about law, rule of law, we need to invest in this area. That's how the court system will work. Thank you.
Thank you. And normally in America and other places, the way you get raised, I think, or Ahmed being getting raised at his job is based on your performance. But you are telling me that the legislators, they have gotten raised for doing practically nothing. Let's go around the room. We are about to close, and let me get your closing comment, because I'm getting a little emotional here, and it's like nobody cares. Nobody knows what is going on. We are going on talking about, again, I go back to CPP framework document, coming sweating, Boaka sleeping, and that's the thing that we're concerned about. And these guys, they are enjoying, they are having feast. JFK is 6 million. JFK, 6 million. The printing for presidential affairs alone, just printing, it more than MCSS budget. And you know Magay is not going to print anything. I'm going to call his name. This is ridiculous. Let's go around the room because I'm getting angry here. I'm disgusted. I want to go to Liberia, man. I'm qualified. I want to do more for my country. But these guys, they are joking. And we have citizens, voters in the street propping them up because we alone know how to beg people for crumbs. This is disgusting. Ahmed, let's close.
Thank you, Dennis. Once again for the invitation to be here on Focus on Liberia tonight. And I want to thank my esteemed colleagues and Prince, who will stay up late to help us convey our thoughts and little contributions to the conversation in Liberia about this national tool, this national governance tool, which is the budget. If it is indeed a budget, if it's really is a properly structured, analytical, well researched, and well, you know, uh, uh, purposed budget, which I'm hearing from across the board, from Liberia, from the cause. If there anything we go by that, this is really, it's not a case. The overarching thought, a comment I want to share tonight is that you know a country projects itself in a number of ways. One of them is whether or not this country is ambitious, whether or not we see beyond, the sky we see from the bottom of the well. The Asian people have this analogy where some people are not able to see different perspective because the frog in the well, they only see other frogs in the well, and then they look up and look at the sky. They say, "Well, sky blue is blue, and this is all that I have here, and this is all." For Liberia to get from 80% recurring cost budget, it's going to have to take some fundamental introspection, fundamental soul searching of how we treat our country, how we view our country. Are we patriotic enough? Do we really, are we ambitious in the 21st century, man? This technologically advanced world, the world is so interconnected, and yet here we are in this well and just looking at one another and looking at the sky and not being able to broaden our perspective, uh, to be ambitious, to make this country a better place for our children, for ourselves, and be proud of it. So, some people think by electing another politician will change things. I'm sorry, I have bad news for you. It will not change anything until and unless we are really fundamentally able to soul search and change trajectory and change the way we think about self, about our country, and the way we our morality, the way we view things. Somebody will be arbitrarily allotting huge sums of money to themselves, no justification whatsoever, and yet the rest of the people go in abject poverty. That is unacceptable. This is a travesty. It's a failure of governance. I think that is the message I want to leave with tonight.
Thank you. Sorry, Emre, we stayed too long that you have to be in the traffic. Be safe now, but let's get your parting comments, sir.
Yeah, you see, I like the panelists, everyone, their viewpoints, and so. What I am going to disagree with Ahmed on is, the fast and prayer is something you won't take 170 some more years to fast and pray. I mean, and pray and don't get it right. So I think we have to take responsibility. The responsibility is first of all with the citizens, and it's from us informed people to educate our people. Is one of the failures of the informed community. But I will say this: we're not going to shy from taking responsibility. Okay, the issues of the country cannot be done through fast and pray. Cannot be done and to say it's spiritual. No, bad leadership, and we have to point out the bad leadership. The bad leadership of the past always been the problem. Leadership, good leadership, going to change things around. But then we have to go and identify the person with the track record. The person we think it's not wholly and solely going to rest upon that person. The person will be capable. I mean, will be capable of hiring the right people around him or around her, the right team to make sure that government is working the way government should work. So let us not shy away from the responsibility of what government should do. The government should be able to cater to the people. should be able to run effective programs, should be able to manage our resources, should be able to be accountable, for the revenue that we generate. Those are the things, and those are the things that Himalaya that we can do. So the reason why we're not doing it because we have always had bad leadership. But it's time that you and myself, every one of us, can go out there and educate our people. We don't have to point fingers. We say, take the records of people, the backgrounds of people, and match one against the other and see who is right for the country. And I'm going to stand firm to say that's the reason why I picked Alexander B. Cummings.
I
I
knew
am
that
not
was
saying,
coming.
yeah, I'm not saying that, you will make mistakes. That's not what I'm saying. I am saying that we can sit and put a person who has the experience to expand uh, the private sector, someone who knows how to create jobs. One of the issues we have in our country, our people don't have jobs. Okay, how can you have a, an economy, a vibrant economy, if you don't have a leader who can create jobs? So I leave you all with saying thanks. You guys are all brilliant people. I respect you all. And I'm going to be able to exchange, my information. We can link up and see how we can have the think tank group to solve the problems of our country. But I say I appreciate you, Dennis. Uh, I appreciate the whole team, especially my brother in Liberia. For you to be at work at this time, it shows that you are passionate. It shows that you love our country. And I say I appreciate you even more than some of us who's supposed to be up at this time. Thanks, Dennis.
Thank you. Be safe now, and it's okay when you can leave. Tomorrow, I'm going to
Okay,
be
thank you.
having here Minister Janje Kapli Komini. At the beginning of the show, we play her song, Lisa Apomswo. She's going to be my guest tomorrow at 7 p.m. And on Wednesday, we're going to have, talking about school education, we're going to have the superintendent of the MCSS, that's the Morovia Consolidated School System, Mr. Isaac C. Lapo Zawro. He's going to be my guest here, and I'm going to have FOL education analyst Mr. Cisse Goya. We're going to be talking about MCSS and K through 12 education. Education is serious. Then on Thursday is Tough Talking Thursday. Guess what we're talking about? And Ahmed mentioned that earlier. What does it mean to have love for country? So we're going to be discussing patriotism and nation building. You don't want to miss it. And on Saturday, I'm going to have another gospel musical artist based in the UK, Abena Johnson. She's going to be my guest. You don't want to miss it. Focus on Liberia, where we educate, we elevate, and promote all things Liberia. At this time, let me go to our resident economist, Dehpue Zuo, to give his closing comment. Dehpue?
Thank you, Dennis. I think we've said a lot. All I can say is that the national legislature, to me, is more like electoral conspiracy. Since they want to go for election, they went ahead and arranged this with the executive, particularly the Ministry of State, to have this budget passed. But this budget was not something that benefit the Liberian people, that discuss or that address the bread and butter issue as we look at. So it's important for us to take this note, and even whether opposition or ruling party at the legislature, this is a disservice to the state. They need to go back and see reason to convince our people why Liberian people should accept their tax dollars should be used in this manner. Lastly, I want to encourage all Liberians to be actively and positively involved with the economy. While it's true that we're discussing about national budget, one of the things that we need to focus on is how the private sector can grow. So we want to encourage the Liberian people to get involved into private sector development so that we can look at a small envelope and to address everything from the small envelope. Thank you very much, and have a blessed day.
Friends, your closing comments, sir.
Thank you. So let me say thanks to you, Dennis, and to Ahmed, Sharif, and also Mr. Debuzu for the show tonight. It was wonderful. I'm sure Liberians here enjoy the conversation. Um, it is our hope again that those conversations will help change the dynamic of our politics state of governance so that they can benefit our people. So it's great always having you guys here on the show that Liberians can hear those burning issues, and it also help inform us as to how to make that national decision. So I'm great. I mean, it's great that I was on tonight. Thanks so much.
And Prince, feel free if you want to discuss this budget, let us know. We can have any of our expert panelists to call in from the US to be a part of the show. That's the business we do here.
Yeah.
On that note, I want to thank you, gentlemen, and for coming tonight at such short notice, to discuss the budget. We have just scratched the surface of this whole budget thing. Again, I want to repeat, it's pathetic, it's disgusting. I like how Dehpue called this is a conspiracy. You scratch my back, I scratch your back. So people are giving money to each other for election purposes, and then pressure group, civil society, and political parties, we expect you to talk. We in the media, we are doing our part to shine a light on this in Liberia will say this witchcraft attitude, because this is complete witchcraft attitude for you to take money and just give it to yourself and let people sit there and just starve. There's no electricity. You can put money in electricity. The place is full of trash. And I saw something on Facebook. I mean, our waters, everything is trash. So I said, but what do we take water? Public toilet, trash can, what is it? Everything is filthy, and yet we cannot pump money in those areas. Secret killings, we can put money in police. I spoke to someone who served at the highest of the police and also in NSA. And what he told me was, if you will give money to NSA, you should give 3 times that amount to the police. Imagine that. So if you are giving 10 million to EPS, give 30 million to the police. If you are giving 11 million to the NSA, give 11 million or 33 million to the police. That's how it should be, but it's the other way around. And somebody will say only in Liberia. On that note, we end with the song that says, "We are all Liberians." Whether you are looting from the country and you are singing and you think that's okay, even though that's unpatriotic, we are still Liberians, and we must do whatever it takes to make our country a glorious land of liberty. That's why we are ending with the song that says, "We are all Liberians." Good night, folks, and God bless you.
We are